Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into anger, something we all experience, right? Something we wrestle with.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to try and cut through some of the noise and look at the real difference between, that quick flash of annoyance, petty anger, and the stuff that sticks around, that deep anger that can really impact us.
Exactly. We've dug into a really comprehensive report that breaks down what anger actually is, how it affects us in ways maybe you don't even realize. And crucially, it gives us solid, evidence-based ways to get a better handle on it. So think of this as like your shortcut to understanding anger and finding a bit more emotional freedom without getting totally overwhelmed.
Right. Our goal is to give you a clearer picture of this, powerful emotion, how it can surprisingly hit your health, your relationships, and give you some practical tools so you feel more in control. Okay, let's dive in. So fundamentally, what is anger?
Well, at its heart, anger is a totally normal human emotion. It's that feeling of antagonism, like you're pushing back against something or someone you think has done something wrong, probably on purpose.
Okay.
But here's the key thing. Anger itself isn't necessarily bad. It's not the enemy. It actually has functions.
Functions, really. Usually when I feel angry, I just want it to stop before I, say something stupid.
Yeah, I get that. But think of it like an internal alarm. It can signal to us and maybe to others that something doesn't feel right, that a boundary might have been crossed.
Okay.
And sometimes it can even motivate us,
Yeah.
Push us to solve a problem or stand up for fairness.
Okay, I see that. So it's less about just eliminating anger and more about figuring out how to work with it.
Precisely. Anger's got this dual nature. If we understand it, manage it well, it can be constructive, useful even. But if it's ignored or it gets excessive or becomes this chronic thing, then it can turn destructive. And it's really important to separate the anger inside from the behavior.
Right, like shouting or slamming doors.
Exactly. Aggression, violence, those are behaviors. They aren't the emotion itself.
Yeah.
So the goal is really to learn how to manage the intensity of the anger and express it in healthier ways.
So, okay, what's actually happening inside us physiologically when that anger alarm goes off?
Right. So when anger hits, it flips the switch on our body's rapid response system, the fight or flight thing.
Yeah.
Imagine this flood of stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol pouring into your system. It's designed to get you ready for immediate action.
So you feel it physically?
Oh, yeah. You'll notice your heart pounding. Maybe your blood pressure shoots up. Muscles get tense. Now, that's great if you're, facing a real physical threat.
But most of the time we're not.
Exactly. And that chronic activation, if the anger is ongoing, that takes a serious toll on your health long term.
Okay, like what kind of toll are we talking?
Well, we're looking at a significantly higher risk for things like high blood pressure, serious heart problems, even heart attacks or strokes.
Wow.
It can also weaken your immune system, making you more susceptible to getting sick. That link between persistent anger and these major health issues, it's really stark. It shows why managing it is so vital for just basic well-being.
Yeah, that's a serious wake-up call. And what about the mental side? How does anger affect our thinking?
Mentally, anger tends to really narrow our focus. Almost like putting on blinders. It can make it harder to think clearly, to process information objectively.
So you might jump to conclusions.
Exactly. When you're in that angry state, you're more likely to misinterpret situations or assume the worst about someone else's intentions. And behaviorally, well, we see it, don't we? Facial expressions, body language, and sometimes, unfortunately, aggression.
And what if you just try to push it down? Ignore it, stuff it.
Yeah, suppressing anger, just trying to bottle it up, it's generally not a healthy way to go. It can actually pop up in physical ways, psychosomatic symptoms.
Like headaches.
Headaches, digestive problems, yeah. Things triggered or made worse by that emotional state. It can also lead to feeling kind of numb emotionally or contribute to depression, lack of motivation. And, ironically, stuffing it down can sometimes make you more likely to have a sudden, intense outburst later on when you finally can't hold it in anymore.
Okay, so anger is definitely more complicated than just being annoyed. Now let's get into this idea you mentioned, petty versus deep anger. What's the real difference there?
Right. So while petty and deep aren't, strict clinical terms, they point to important psychological differences. Petty anger usually refers to that immediate kind of situational reaction.
Like getting cut off in traffic.
Exactly. Or, your computer crashing right before you save something. Minor inconveniences. It's often triggered by a specific event, and it tends to be pretty short-lived if you handle it okay. Research actually shows how things like having your goals blocked, like in traffic, directly links to that kind of immediate anger spike.
So it's like a quick flash tied to something specific right now.
Precisely. It's episodic. Comes and goes with the situation.
Okay. And deep anger, then? That sounds more ingrained.
It is. Deep anger is usually more chronic. It often carries this undercurrent of resentment. It can almost feel like part of someone's disposition, you know?
Like baseline irritability.
Yeah, that persistent irritability or kind of sullenness, underlying hostility that doesn't just vanish when the situation changes.
And you mentioned resentment being key to this deeper anger.
Absolutely. Resentment is a huge component. It's that profound feeling of unfairness. Like your basic expectations of how things should be or how you should be treated have been violated.
That inner voice screaming, that's not fair.
Exactly. It often involves feeling deeply wronged or maybe seeing others get things you feel you deserve. And this kind of feeling, it can simmer for a really long time. It fuels bitterness, maybe even fantasies of revenge. It's heavy stuff.
Wow, that sounds exhausting to carry around. Where does that kind of deep anger typically stem from?
Often the roots go back. Sometimes to unhealed experiences, maybe from childhood, things like emotional neglect or even abuse. Or it can stem from fundamental emotional needs that aren't being met right now or weren't met historically.
What sort of needs are we talking about?
The real basics for feeling okay as a human. Things like secure attachment, feeling connected, safe, understood, accepted by others.
Right.
Also needing some autonomy, feeling competent, having realistic limits, self-control, feeling free to express your needs and emotions, even spontaneity and play.
Things we don't always think about as needs.
Exactly. But when these core needs go consistently unmet, it can manifest as chronic anger, or sometimes anxiety or depression. So deep anger often isn't just about the surface irritation. It's tapping into these deeper vulnerabilities.
So its impact is way bigger than just being ticked off at a slow driver.
Oh, absolutely. Deep anger affects your whole well-being. It puts a massive strain on relationships. It clouds your judgment. And because of that constant physiological stress, it really contributes to significant physical health problems down the line.
Okay, now, can these two types, the petty situational stuff and the deep chronic anger, can they be connected?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
They're not always in separate boxes. For instance, if you keep experiencing things that feel like petty annoyances, but they keep hitting a nerve, maybe tapping into an unmet need or a core value.
They add up?
They can add up, exactly. They can brew over time and turn into that deep-seated resentment. And the flip side is also true. Someone carrying a lot of underlying deep anger might find themselves reacting way out of proportion to minor, petty things.
Ah, so dealing with the deep stuff might actually make the small stuff easier to handle.
It often does. Addressing that core anger can make you much less reactive to everyday frustrations.
That's a really important connection. Okay, so what actually starts the anger? Whether it's that quick flash or something deeper, what are the common triggers?
Right, anger gets ignited by triggers. These can be external things, stuff happening around us, or internal states, things going on inside us.
Okay.
External triggers often involve perceiving some kind of threat or feeling treated unfairly, unjustly, having your rights or dignity violated, feeling disrespected or betrayed. Those are huge ones.
Yeah, those make sense.
Situational factors are big too. Like we said, having your goals blocked, believing someone else is responsible for something bad happening, or just being under a lot of pressure, traffic, deadlines, you name it.
Okay, so those are things outside of us. What about the internal triggers?
Internal triggers can be things like our own unmet expectations, how we think the world should work.
Or how people should behave.
Exactly. Our own insecurities can be triggers too, or just feeling like we lack control over a situation. And, importantly, our past experiences, especially trauma, can act as really potent internal triggers. Well, even subtle reminders of past trauma can spark really intense emotional reactions, including anger, that might seem completely out of proportion to what's happening now, but they're deeply connected to those unresolved past wounds.
So it's not always about the present moment.
Not at all. And this is critical. Our perception plays a massive role. Anger itself can cloud our judgment, remember. It makes it harder to see things objectively or even monitor our own reactions accurately.
So just because I feel angry doesn't mean I was actually wronged.
Precisely. The feeling isn't always a reliable indicator of objective reality. And triggers are incredibly personal. What rolls off one person's back might be a major provocation for someone else, all based on their history, their beliefs, their sensitivities. That's why self-awareness, really knowing your own buttons, is so fundamental to managing anger.
Okay, that gives us a much better map of anger. So now the practical stuff. What can we actually do when that petty anger starts bubbling up? Those immediate strategies.
Right. When that acute situational anger flares up, the immediate goal is basically twofold. Dial down the physical intensity and stop yourself from reacting impulsively in a way you'll regret.
Okay, stop the train before it derails.
Pretty much. And one of the simplest but most powerful things is just the power of the pause.
The pause, just stopping.
Just stopping for a beat. Think before you speak. It's so easy to lash out in the heat of the moment. Taking even a few seconds to collect your thoughts can prevent a lot of damage.
Yeah, I could see that.
Another great tactic is taking a time out. Actually physically removing yourself from the situation, even for just a minute or two. Step into another room, go for a quick walk outside, even just turn away. It gives you space to cool down and get some perspective back.
Those sound like good circuit breakers. What else can we do physically when we feel that surge?
Simple relaxation techniques are incredibly effective. Deep breathing is a big one. When we're angry, our breathing gets shallow and fast, right? That fuels the fight or flight.
Right.
So consciously slowing it down, breathing deeply from your diaphragm. Inhale through the nose, hold, exhale slowly through the mouth, maybe counting. That activates your body's natural calming system, the parasympathetic nervous system. It really helps lower that physical arousal.
Okay, deep breaths. What else?
Grounding exercises can also be really helpful if the anger feels overwhelming. Things like the 5-4-3-2-1 method.
Remind me.
You just notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. It pulls you out of the angry thoughts and anchors you in the present moment.
Ah, right. Good for breaking that spiral. What about more active things if you feel all keyed up?
Absolutely. Getting some physical activity or movement can be a really healthy outlet for that pent-up energy. A brisk walk, a run, anything you enjoy that gets you moving. It helps burn off those stress hormones.
But not like punching a pillow.
Well, that's the distinction. We want constructive release, not aggressive catharsis, which can sometimes make anger worse. The goal is release and mood improvement. Distraction and refocusing attention can work too, temporarily.
Like putting on music.
Yeah, music, a hobby, anything that shifts your focus away from the trigger for a bit. It stops you from just stewing on it and letting it build.
Yeah.
Key word is temporary, though. It's not about avoiding the issue long-term if it needs dealing with.
Got it.
Some people find using a code word helpful, either just for themselves or with a partner or friend. A quick signal like time out or need space, without needing a whole explanation.
Simple but effective.
And don't underestimate simple things like cold water. Splashing your face, running cold water over your wrists, it can give you a quick physiological jolt that helps interrupt the anger cycle.
These are all great for managing the immediate physical feeling of petty anger. What about shifting our thinking in that moment? Any quick cognitive tricks?
Yeah, even small mental shifts can help. Try to identify possible solutions. If there's a concrete problem causing the anger, shifting from just being mad about it to thinking, okay, what could I do about this, can be empowering.
Like closing the door on a messy room instead of just fuming about it.
Exactly. Or rescheduling if plans get messed up.
Yeah.
And part of that is also starting to accept the things you genuinely can't control. Using humor can sometimes work too, but you have to use it carefully.
Not sarcastic humor.
Definitely not sarcastic or hurtful humor. But a bit of gentle, lighthearted humor can sometimes diffuse tension or highlight maybe unrealistic expectations you had. Affect labeling is another one, just naming the emotion.
Saying, I'm feeling angry.
Yep, just acknowledging it internally. Okay, I'm feeling really angry right now without judgment. It creates a bit of distance and can lessen the intensity. And finally, repeating a calming word or phrase silently like, relax, it's okay, or this too shall pass, especially while doing deep breathing, offers reassurance and helps calm the body.
It really sounds like practicing these when you're not angry is key, so they become almost automatic when you are.
Absolutely crucial. When you're in the grip of anger, your thinking isn't clear. So the more you practice these techniques when you're calm, the more readily available they'll be when you need them most.
Makes sense.
And remember, not everything works for everyone or every time. Experiment, see what resonates with you, maybe even jot down what helps, but these are mainly for those immediate petty flare-ups. If you're dealing with recurring anger or those deeper issues, you need more sustained strategies. Temporary fixes shouldn't replace addressing significant underlying problems.
Right, because that unexpressed anger can cause other problems later.
Exactly. It can turn inward or build up.
Okay, so let's shift gears then. When we're talking about that deep anger, the chronic stuff, the resentment, What are the longer-term strategies for healing and letting go?
Right. Addressing deep anger, that requires more profound and sustained approaches. It's really about lasting emotional healing. And the absolute foundation for that is building self-awareness and emotional intelligence, or EI.
We hear a lot about EI. What does it mean in this context?
Well, EI is basically your ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions effectively. And also to understand and influence the emotions of others constructively.
So how does getting better at EI help with deep anger specifically?
It starts with self-awareness, really tuning into your own anger patterns. What triggers that deeper stuff? What situations, people, thoughts, memories, even physical sensations tend to set it off?
So paying closer attention.
Yes, and maybe keeping that journal you mentioned. Tracking episodes, what happened, how you felt physically, the intensity, it helps reveal those patterns. And crucially, understanding the underlying emotions. Anger is often like a cover emotion.
A shield.
Yeah, a shield for more vulnerable feelings underneath, like fear, sadness, hurt, shame, frustration. Asking yourself, okay, beneath this anger, what am I really feeling? What pain or fear might this be masking? That can unlock so much.
So digging deeper than just the surface anger.
Exactly. Higher EI helps you do that. It also builds empathy and improves self-regulation, that ability to pause and choose your response, even when those deep buttons get pushed. The aim is to eventually channel that angry energy constructively. And understanding the link to unmet needs is huge here too.
Back to those core needs like connection, autonomy.
Yes, recognizing which of those might be deficient, historically or currently, is vital for getting at the roots of deep anger. The why is just as important as the how when it comes to deep healing.
Okay, understanding the roots is foundational. What about actually changing the thinking patterns that fuel that deep anger?
That's where cognitive restructuring comes in.
Yeah.
Often through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. The core idea of CBT is that your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all linked.
So change the thoughts, change the feelings.
Pretty much. By learning to identify and challenge those negative, distorted, or unhelpful thoughts that fuel the anger, you could shift your emotional response and your behavior.
How do you actually do that rewiring? It sounds complex.
It starts with catching those anger-fueling thoughts. People with deep anger often have ingrained ways of thinking that are, well, exaggerated or irrational. We call them cognitive distortions.
Like what?
Things like overgeneralizing, this always happens, or catastrophizing, this is a total disaster, personalization, they did that to me, or black and white thinking, it's either perfect or it's ruined.
Okay, I recognize some of those.
Most of us do. The next step is examining the evidence. Is that thought actually based on fact? Or is it an assumption, an opinion? What really supports it? What contradicts it? Writing it down helps the situation, the thought, the feeling, and then actively challenging that thought.
So questioning your own angry thoughts.
Exactly. Then you work on replacing them with more realistic, balanced alternatives. Instead of nobody ever respects me, maybe it's, okay, that felt disrespectful and that's upsetting, but it doesn't mean everyone disrespects me. Shifting demands, they must do this, to preferences, I wish they would, helps too.
That makes sense. It's about getting more objective, less caught up in the emotion.
Precisely. And that involves reality testing.
Right.
Actively checking, do my interpretations match the actual facts? Where's the line between what happened and my story about what happened? Considering alternative, less angering explanations is key. Maybe the person who didn't greet you was just preoccupied, not intentionally snubbing you.
Right. And perspective taking.
Crucial. Trying to see it from their angle, what might they be thinking or feeling? Asking, how would a neutral friend describe this? Or what would I tell a friend in this situation? Can really shift things. And keeping that detailed anger log helps you see which specific thought patterns keep tripping you up.
Okay. Now, a lot of deep anger seems tied to past hurts. How does forgiveness fit into letting that go?
Forgiveness is, well, it's a powerful psychological tool for releasing the bitterness and pain tied to deep anger, especially resentment. It's a conscious internal decision to let go of those feelings. The anger, the resentment, the desire for revenge towards someone who harmed you.
But it's not forgetting.
No, absolutely not forgetting. It's not excusing the behavior or condoning it or even necessarily reconciling with the person. It's fundamentally about freeing yourself.
Freeing yourself from their grip.
Exactly. Freeing yourself from the emotional control that situation or person holds over you. You really can't hold on to deep resentment and forgiveness about the same thing simultaneously. They're incompatible.
That makes sense. But how do you do forgiveness? It feels huge, maybe impossible sometimes.
It is a process. It's often gradual. It usually starts with honestly acknowledging your own hurt and anger, validating your pain.
Yeah.
Then clearly identifying what, specifically, you need to forgive and whom. Then comes the conscious choice, an active decision to start letting go.
That sounds like the hard part.
It often is. Where possible, practicing some empathy, trying to understand the other person's perspective, not to excuse them, but maybe just to soften your own anger can sometimes help, and actively working to release the emotional power they hold over you. For deep hurts, you might need to revisit that decision to forgive many times.
It's not a one-and-done thing.
Rarely. But the benefits are enormous. Healthier relationships, better mental well-being, less anxiety, stress, hostility, even physical benefits like lower blood pressure, stronger immunity. It's a profound relief when you can finally release that weight.
Forgiveness seems very past-focused. What about accepting things in the present that maybe fuel deep anger but you can't change?
Acceptance is closely related. It's about acknowledging the reality of something, a past event, a person's limitations, a situation that maybe doesn't align with how you wish things were, but it is the reality.
So not liking it, but not fighting it internally anymore.
Exactly. It's not condoning or dismissing the past, but honoring its influence while choosing to release the internal resistance that keeps you stuck. Letting go often involves feeling a whole range of emotions: grief, sadness, anger still, maybe relief, and allowing yourself to process them, not stuff them down.
And the benefit is freedom.
Emotional freedom, yes. Less anxiety, less depression, more openness to growth, better relationships because you're more authentic. It's essential for moving forward.
So it's not just inner work, but also how we express ourselves when dealing with deep anger, right? Communication.
Absolutely critical. How you express anger matters just as much as how you feel it. Learning to communicate assertively is a cornerstone of managing deep anger well.
Assertive versus aggressive.
Right. Assertiveness means expressing your feelings, needs, beliefs honestly, directly, respectfully, while considering the other person's rights too. Aggression is dominating, blaming, maybe using insults or sarcasm. It violates rights and escalates conflict.
And the opposite is being passive.
Yes, passivity is neglecting your own needs, avoiding conflict, not expressing yourself. That can lead to resentment bubbling up, or passive-aggressive behavior, which isn't healthy either.
So how can we be more assertive when feeling that deep anger?
Using I statements is key. I feel frustrated when, instead of you always make me feel. Focus on your experience. Avoid blame.
Okay.
Be specific and concrete about the behavior bothering you. Practice active listening. Really try to hear the other person out. Set clear boundaries about your needs and expectations, respectfully. Try to keep your tone calm, your body language open, and focus on finding solutions or compromises, not just on being right.
We've talked a lot about internal states, thoughts, feelings. You mentioned journaling again. How does writing specifically help with deep anger?
Writing can be incredibly powerful. Expressive writing, just freely writing your deepest thoughts and feelings about the anger, the resentment, uncensored, can be a really safe outlet. It can provide catharsis, reduce the intensity.
Getting it out on paper.
Exactly. And regular journaling, more structured reflection on anger episodes, helps you become more of an observer of yourself. It helps identify triggers, patterns, root causes. It's a private space to explore, evaluate, gain clarity, and reduce reactivity over time. Using specific prompts can help too.
Like asking what's really underneath this anger.
Precisely. Or, what am I truly furious about here? If my anger could speak, what would it say? Exploring those questions on paper can be revealing. All these long-term strategies, EI, CBT, forgiveness, acceptance, assertive communication, writing, they all interconnect and support each other. It's a holistic approach. And it's a journey, definitely not a quick fix. It takes time, patience, and self-compassion.
It sounds like managing deep anger is a really involved ongoing process. Are there also broader lifestyle things that support our overall emotional balance and help with anger?
Oh, absolutely. Your overall lifestyle is hugely influential. Think of it as preventative maintenance and also restorative care for your emotional system.
The mind-body connection again.
Definitely. Regular physical exercise is fantastic. It's an outlet for that pent-up energy, helps process stress hormones, releases mood-boosting endorphins. Long-term, it can even strengthen brain areas involved in impulse control.
And sleep, you mentioned that earlier.
Sleep is absolutely critical. Research directly links sleep deprivation to increased anger intensity. It makes us more emotionally reactive, less able to cope with frustration.
So being tired literally makes you grumpier.
It really does. Prioritizing good sleep hygiene, consistent schedule, relaxing routine, cool, dark, quiet room is essential for emotional stability. And nutrition plays a part too.
How so?
A balanced diet supports stable mood. Things like too much caffeine, especially late in the day, or lots of refined sugar and processed foods can actually increase irritability for some people. And just general stress management is vital. Making time for things you enjoy, social support, saying no sometimes, managing your overall load.
And it's a cycle, right? Anger can mess up sleep and eating habits, too.
It's often bidirectional, yeah. Sure. Being angry disrupts sleep, leads to poor food choices, maybe less motivation to exercise. So making small positive changes in one area can ripple outwards.
You also mentioned mindfulness and meditation before for immediate relief. How do they fit into managing the deeper chronic anger long term?
They're incredibly valuable long-term tools as well. Yoga, with its mix of movement, breathwork, and meditation, promotes deep relaxation and emotional release. Some poses are even thought to help release stored tension. Meditation in various forms helps you train your attention, observe thoughts and feelings, including anger, without getting swept away. It cultivates calm awareness. Mindfulness itself, that core practice of paying non-judgmental attention to the present moment.
Being aware of the anger starting.
Exactly. It creates that crucial space, that pause between the trigger and your reaction. It calms the body and mind. Even brief daily practices, mindful breathing, a quick body scan make a difference over time. Yoga kind of combines the physical, breath, and meditative aspects for a really potent approach.
This has been incredibly insightful. But how does someone know if their anger has reached a point where they really need professional help? What are the signs?
That's a really important question. And reaching out is a sign of strength, remember, not weakness. Therapy offers tools and support that are hard to get alone.
So what should you look out for?
Maybe your anger feels consistently out of control, leads to scary behavior, things you regret. If it's seriously damaging your work, your relationships, hurting people you love, reducing your quality of life.
Okay.
Also, if you find yourself getting angry very easily, very often, or way more intensely than the situation seems to warrant, if you express it in unhealthy ways all the time, constant criticism, withdrawing, sulking, passive aggression, if it seems linked to physical health problems, or if you suspect it might be part of a bigger picture, like depression, PTSD, or past trauma, getting a professional assessment is key then.
What kinds of therapy actually work well for anger issues?
CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is very effective. It directly targets those thought-emotion-behavior links, gives you practical skills, relaxation, challenging thoughts, problem-solving, communication.
Okay.
DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, is also excellent, especially for intense emotions and difficulty regulating them. It teaches mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, interpersonal skills.
What about deeper exploration?
Psychodynamic therapy can help explore those unconscious drivers, past conflicts, childhood issues that might be fueling the anger. It's often longer term, but can lead to profound healing. Anger management programs, often group-based, usually use CBT principles too, very practical skill building.
And if relationships are suffering?
Couples or family therapy can be incredibly helpful then. Understanding the anger within the relationship system, improving communication. Therapy is active, collaborative. It's about building skills, insight, empowering you.
And how do you find the right therapist for anger management?
You can ask your doctor for referrals. Check with your insurance provider. Look at professional association websites or reputable online directories.
Different kinds of professionals.
Yes. Psychiatrists who can prescribe meds, psychologists, licensed therapists, LPCs, LCSWs, LMFTs. Look for experience specifically in anger management, CBT, DBT, or trauma if relevant. Online therapy is also a valid option now.
And finding a good fit.
Crucial. You need to feel understood, respected, safe. It's okay to have initial calls with a few therapists to find someone you click with. That therapeutic relationship is really important.
This has been such a thorough exploration, really helpful. As we wrap up, what's the main thing you hope listeners take away from our deep dive today?
I think the key takeaway is that learning to understand and manage your anger, both the quick flares and the deeper currents, it's really a continuous journey. But it's a journey towards much